Thanks for tuning in to Becoming Something, where we promise to keep the conversation honest and real for young adults in their 20s and 30s. Every moment we live is training for a future moment, and that's why we do this podcast, because we want you to be prepared for everything that life is going to throw at you. Our hope with this podcast is that it would help you become all that God desires you to be. So with that in mind, let's jump right in to this week's episode of Becoming Something.
What's up, podcast world? It's your boy JP in the podcast studio with Kathy and Nate.
Hey, guys.
How's it going, guys?
Just living the dream.
I'm proud of you guys because y'all have really coordinated your shoes with your sweatshirts.
You literally asked me, "Oh, hey, did you know that your shoes match your?"
But isn't there a point of too much matching?
I'm wearing a red, green, and navy plaid sweater, and I have red, green, and navy plaid shoes. And she said, "Did you know?"
Did you mean to? Yeah.
I'm all about the matchy matchy.
Like, you're very matchy matchy.
I like it.
Some people might say that's too much.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it.
Listen, here's the deal. I'm
don't care.
contrarian. I love to do what is confusing to other people. They're like, "Wait, what?"
That's what I say about your teaching all the time.
Yeah.
I leave Sundays, I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah. Well,
Were you trying to make a joke? Because it's
Yes.
also kind of true. Like, he says things that are like on purpose, like to rile you up, to make you
so
think.
you know who
yeah.
else did that?
Who?
Jesus.
I know. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I get why you do it.
Man.
So that's
Man.
cute. Y'all are matchy matchy.
Well, hey, Merry Christmas. That's a very Christmas outfit.
You know who's not?
I love it.
You know who's not matchy matchy?
Who? Me.
This girl.
But I'm coordinated.
I don't
Guys,
know.
it was the first day it felt cold outside, and I was like, I don't know what to wear. There's too many options, too many sweaters.
Yeah, what's
I
it
tried on
Sunday?
sweater
7.
weather.
I know. So excited.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Sunday was super cold and icy.
It was like I didn't really
But
get
She
dressed.
didn't get out
But
Sunday.
yeah, you didn't
didn't
go
get
leave
out
the house on Sundays.
She didn't leave. Kathy doesn't leave the house on Sundays.
I was like, man, Sunday
She's
was
like,
horrible
hey,
here.
she's
I
like, this
forgot about
streaming
Sunday.
thing. This streaming thing is amazing. Man,
I
I can
went to
just second
church.
cup of coffee
You
on the
saw
couch.
Me. I feel like you make eye contact with me when you teach. Were you?
No, it's
that's
just
a,
like
that's a
when
teaching
I
trick.
like,
Uh-oh.
yeah. You're always trying to find the biggest center in the room because it like is helpful with the motivation. Like, hey, who do you think is like coming in the most guilty this morning?
I'll raise
And you
my
just try
hand.
to like stare at
That
them.
Wait,
makes
do
sense.
you
You
like
stare
look
me
at
every
people?
No,
Really?
no.
I
mean, you
always-
look at
if I'm
people, but not
teaching,
intentionally.
I like
Yeah.
find the people
People
who
always
are like
feel
really
like people
engaged.
like my whole life, like my whole teaching career. People have come up and be like, "You were looking at me
Yeah.
the whole time."
I
Like,
used to
it
feel
wasn't
that in
intentional.
staff
They'll
prayer.
also come up like this has happened many times, where they'll come up and like they'll assume I was talking about them. They're
Dude.
like, "Hey, yeah, so man, about
and then they
that."
confess.
Man,
It's like, dude, I wasn't talking about you. It's just like we have a guilty conscience.
that is wild. That happened to me somewhat recently. I'm like, what?
Someone
No,
said that to you?
of
Yeah.
course not.
I would never assume that.
Yeah.
I would assume
The-
you're talking about everyone but me.
The proverb says, the wicked flee when no one pursues them. But I'm not saying that the person's wicked, but that
Yeah.
principle of like, man, we always kind of assume that the room is talking about us or our struggles or whatnot. It's
I
just
did
not-
feel like
So you
in
look-
staff prayer you would like look at me, but I felt like it's just
That's
we're
because
friends.
there's like 20 people.
I don't know. I felt like
That's
we were
because-
locked and loaded.
That's because I sat in the same chair every week, and you sat directly
That's
across
right.
every week, and
Teacher's pet.
you would cry for attention at every moment. That's what happened, and I literally
I
would
was
be making
like-
this like really, like meaningful, powerful point, and you'd grab your Diet Coke and go,
No, I popped the tap right then.
and I'd be like, Kathy, what in the world?
Man, we lost you and one
Y'all
other
miss
person
me.
on staff that, yeah, we need whatever.
You need me back?
No,
Oh.
for sure not.
No, we're good. We're good. No, we're chill, man. We're good. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go that far. I'm just making a point of there's a void there. There's a void. There is a void of distraction. I do feel like
We're
we're
like
less.
really
I
on
feel like
task.
we're more focused today than we were.
Hey, it's good to be known for something.
Yeah.
Do you like to work with leaders?
Do I like to work with leaders?
Yeah.
I would love to work with a leader. That would be a real gift from the Lord. if he would smile upon me in that way, man, it'd be a real blessing.
What would a leader look like? I feel like you've been around the block.
Leaders, you look around, you turn around, you look backwards. I've been around the block. Is that a jab again?
No,
Are you talking about my past?
I didn't mean that.
Is that what this is? Like, oh, hey, Mr. Big Sinner. Dude, the Lord saved me, man.
I mean, you've worked in business.
Yeah.
You led a little young adult thing that was kind of cute, and then and I feel like you're around some of the best leaders in ministry today.
Yeah, you
have
turn
your
around.
phone.
Quit pointing to yourself.
Whoever's a leader,
Yeah.
you look backwards, and if you have followers, you know you're a leader.
Like, so how do you get there? Like, what impresses you about like an employee? Like, and that's what we want to talk about. Like, how can you stand out? How can you be impressed if you're entering into the workforce, young adult years, 20s and 30s? What are some things you can do?
Man, we're just doing a lot of book shout outs because I feel like there's a book out there called Welcome to Adulting.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is the cycle that I've observed is our whole life has been organized for us. You know, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, first period, second period, third period, fourth period, lunch, recess, athletics, right? Our whole life, all the way. And then you get to college and you taste a little bit more freedom. Like nobody's going to make you go to class, but if you have some discipline, you'll show up, you go to class, you get the hours in, you get a diploma, and you've worked really hard for this moment. Like I'm done with formal education, and I have something that says, in theory, you should hire me. And so you get the job in exchange for money, and people sit in that moment right there. And this was the question that I would hear over and over and over. Do you know what it is?
No.
Is this really it?
Oh yeah.
Like that's it. Is this really it?
Is this all there is?
And so then they go, man, I'm going to go back and take the GMAT. I need to go back to college. I need to go to grad school. I need to go to seminary. I need to go like this. Like, I guess I don't have enough to get the job I really want. So I need to buy some more time and some more degrees so that I can get the job I really want. And it's just this whole idea that we've thought our whole lives, like fulfillment and happiness is going to come through by way of work. And we get in the real world, and it's like, man, people don't know what they're doing. And it's like, if, like I made the joke recently, like sometimes, Friday Q&A, I will get these questions about like a toxic work environment. Like, you don't understand. My boss wants me to be there at 8 a.m,
Yeah.
Or there's a young woman that recently went viral on TikTok because of the rant of like, she has to go to work.
Really?
And like her whole
she
life
can't fit in the rest of her life.
Because if you hit the work environment like post like in the midst of COVID,
oh totally,
and so you're working remote, and now you have to go, and she's like, who's going to pay for my gas?
Yeah.
Who's going to who's going to pay for the wear and tear on my car and the time? So it's like now, like what was an 8 to 5 job, she's saying like now it's like 7 to 6 because I don't get home until 6:30. Like, what in the world? This isn't fair. And I'm like, oh man, what did we do to an entire generation?
Wow.
Yeah.
And so just this idea that like Paul says you're to strive to live a quiet life and work with your hands. He said that to the Thessalonians. Colossians 3, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as though you're working for the Lord, not for man, because you know it's the Lord Jesus Christ that you receive a reward from. Titus 2:10, my favorite, says work in such a way that you make the teachings of God our Savior attractive.
That's a good
And
one.
so I think a lot of us are going to work thinking, hey, I've got to enjoy it. You enjoy hobbies, right? What they're doing, like if you really enjoyed it, they wouldn't need to pay you to be there. And so here's like some practical, Marcus Buckingham came up with this idea that I've always thought about is like, put your strengths to work. And the principle is you need to know what you're good at. Another way to say it is like what you run a 5-minute mile in. Like a lot of people can run a 9-minute mile, but not
13.
everyone can run a 5-minute mile. So it's like, what do you run? What are you best in class at? Like, what are you really good at? What did God make you to do? What are those things? And so like with you, it's like, it's going to be personal skills and like communication and preaching and teaching. Like those, like God gifted you in that way. And so it's probably not going to be as much like administration and organization and some of those kinds of things, even discipline, right? But I'm picking on you, but in a real way. Usually it's laced with sarcasm.
Yeah.
No, this is
I was
great.
waiting for the joke.
No,
And so like there is a floor of administration and organization that you need to be a part of a company or a church or a nonprofit or whatever, right?
Really?
Yes. Like you can be the
Certain
best
level.
preacher in the world, but if you don't show up in time for the service to preach at it, no one's ever going to know that you're the best preacher in the world. You won't have preaching opportunities. So there's a punctuality and like, hey, you've got to turn your stuff in on time and you've got to respond to emails. Like there's a floor to that you have to be good at enough it's just table stakes to be in the organization. I don't care how great you are at any one thing. Like you can be the best attorney, you can be the best doctor, you can be the best preacher, you can be the best barista. Like if you're not good at like have a baseline at some of these other things, then you're not good. And you won't hold a job and no one will ever know that you're the best. And you're wasting your time sharpening your craft because you never got those baseline table stakes.
But shouldn't the company just hire someone else to like fix that for me?
If you can get to that baseline and you can display, because for them to do that, like they've got to know consistently that you're that good.
Yeah.
Typically, if you can get to that baseline, right? Yeah. This is true of me. Like I'm not great of administration and organization. Like that's not my strong suit. But I had to learn that and even incorporate disciplines around that so that, make these rules for myself. Like every email that comes in, I'm going to respond within 24 hours. I'm going to spend this time deleting emails to try to go to zero inbox. These aren't things that come natural to me at all. But I'm going to incorporate those practices so that I can display what I'm good at so that hopefully one day I can have hire someone to help me.
But that's what's different is I think people would look at you and be like,
he's always had an administrative assistant.
Yeah. It's like, well, why can't I?
Yeah.
It's
I paid my dues.
Yeah, right.
For years and years and years. Like I had no admin.
Right.
And I'm doing my own expense reports, I'm doing it right. And so today I have help in that and I can really focus on the areas of my strengths. I can organize the staff around my weaknesses, right? I have that luxury today, but not always, right? I mean, I had to get to this place. That's another thing I think a younger generation takes for granted is they think that their boss became their boss by mistake.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this person's terrible. They're a terrible human being. They're terrible. I could do their job so much better than them. And it's like, that rarely happens.
Right.
Rarely does someone get in a position above you by mistake. Typically, they worked hard for it. Every now and then, it's they knew someone or they're related to someone. But more than not, they're really good at something. And so you want to find that area that you can respect them for because you not respecting your authority is just not going to go well for you. So to make this practical, I think you have to get baseline good at the things that you're not good at so that you can really then focus on your strengths. And this whole principle of focusing on your strengths, if you think about it, we grew up in, like if you make an A in English, an A in history, an A in athletics, but a D in math, right? Then your parents, your whole life, they get that report card and they're like, hey, you got to focus on this D. You got to get this D up.
Right.
But that's not how the real world works.
Well, that's what's so funny. It's like
you get hired for your A's.
Yeah.
No one cares. Yeah, right.
The real world works is like, hey, what do you make an A in, and how do we make that even better?
Right.
And so that's the whole principle of if you make an A in English, then it's like, all right, how do you find an area of expertise that highlights your strengths in English that you become even better? And so now you're an author, and how do you become the best author in the world and, write scripts and screenplays and all the things, right? Because you're so good at that subject.
Yeah.
And nobody in the author world is going to say, oh man, we really need you to be good at math.
Yeah.
But we do need you to like respond to emails, and we do need you like to have some baseline level of math that you have to do to be an author.
Yeah.
And so like that's a good way to think about that. But I think there's a lot of people that, I mean, it's like, man, I've had to let people go because they don't do expense reports.
Yeah.
Like they just can't figure it out. And it's like, man, you're gonna have to pay for that out of pocket because you didn't turn that in on time enough times, regardless of all of our warnings. And so we told you if this happened again, you'd have to pay for it. There's grace. And now you really have to pay for it because, this is like table stake stuff.
Yeah.
Like this is a non-negotiable. You got to do this. In our world, email's a necessary evil, if you will. Like you have to respond to emails. We have to communicate with people.
Yeah. Why did you have us we just came out of a staff meeting where we did an activity. Why did you have us do that?
Well, I think it was more around innovation. Like as I look at us as an organization, I think that we're in a lull of creativity and organization. So we did like an engineering challenge where I broke everyone up into 5 teams, and I gave them a fixed amount of supplies and a Sour Patch Kid, and they had to create something that shoots the Sour Patch Kid the furthest. Whoever shoots it the furthest wins.
That's so fun.
And they had a fixed amount of time, fixed amount of supplies, and some certain rules.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
And so we're like, hey, and then after that exercise, I said, what did you learn? And like a big takeaway was it was one of the more simple ideas that worked. And so a lot of the supplies that we have are unnecessary. They're distractions. We really want to focus on what are the supplies that allow for success. What is, we need a really clear objective. And so like in your organization, whatever you do, it's like, what's your clear objective? If it's sales, then it's probably, the most sales. If it's teaching, well, then it's the highest grades, right? You can kind of determine, all right, here's my area of expertise. What's my objective?
Yeah.
What am I trying to do? And I think so often we try to just get by. And that's not cool. Like that doesn't honor God. I think like, hey, what does it look like for us to be the best, and not to, and really like what I said is like becoming something as an example. People reach out to us often and they want to learn about how we do podcasts.
Yeah.
Because of this podcast. And they're like, hey, you do a podcast really well. They think, that's their opinion. This just happened, honestly, with 2 different churches. They're like, hey, can you help us with ours? Success for me is for their podcast to do better than ours. They're not the competition.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like they're putting out faith-based materials. So I want to help them so much that their podcast is actually better than ours. Now, I will just say my key objective is not helping people do podcasts.
Yeah.
Like that's not why we're getting up, but it is helping the whole world know Jesus.
Right.
And so I want to do everything I can to help the whole world know Jesus. And Zig Ziglar said, you can have anything you want in the world, just help everyone else get what they want. And I kind of held on to that. And I'm like, man, that's great. Like I want to raise up communicators better than me. Right now I'm stuck with you. And so just kidding. I'm joking. But no, like that's why we bring in, communicators from other churches all the time. And we're trying to help them become better communicators than us, because we think there's processes and principles here that we've learned that we can apply to other places. And so I would be that kind of employee. I would be the kind of employee that makes everyone around you better. I would be the kind of barista that when you have the shift, those you share the shift with, that's the best shift. And they try to figure out why is that shift so well. And so the principle is, I've heard this well said, Pharaoh never misses his Joseph. And I was like, my senior pastor used to say that. I'm like, what does that mean? And it was just like, hey, why is everything working in the field so well? Yep. It's like, oh, Joseph's there. Why is everything in the palace going so well? Oh, Joseph's there. Why is everything in the community going so well? Oh, look, there's Joseph again. It's like wherever there's Joseph, there was success. And Pharaoh is going to notice that. Like, what's the common denominator? Oh, it's Joseph. Joseph's the common denominator. And so it's like, be a Joseph in that way.
But like you mentioned, like if you're a barista, that should be the best shift. Like my job as a barista is just to make the coffee.
Yeah.
Like they tell me to make coffee, I make coffee. Like I shouldn't have to bother with what my other coworkers are doing or what's on the floor. Like that's someone else's job. Like my job is my job, and like
everyone's job. Everyone listening to us right now has the same job. I think we often think our job is to make coffee or to teach a class or to be in the courtroom or to, like we think that's our job. Everyone
How could you just say that everyone has the same job?
Has the same job.
Yeah, I don't have a job.
That's you do, right? You're a mom. So you have the same job as everyone else, which is to bring the most glory to God imaginable through the task that he's given you.
That's so good.
Right? So if you're a mom, be the best mom. Honor God, and not trying to create mom guilt here at all. And I know that's a thing,
Man.
but it's just like, how do I do the best with what I have?
Yep.
Sometimes that's going to mean taking a nap, mom. But like if you make a cup of coffee for a living, make the best cup of coffee, like as an act of worship. Like think about that cup of coffee as like, this is my opportunity to express excellence toward God, like to make it a fragrant offering. It's going to be the best cup of coffee you ever tasted. Why? Because a follower of Jesus made it.
Man,
it's an opportunity to worship.
I feel like that just happened to me. I go to Baylor football games. Park in the same parking garage every time, and the people who work there just kind of don't really want to be there. You have to like check your thing, and and I pull up this time, and this guy goes, "Hey, it's such a good day today." I'm like, "Wow, it is." I'm like, "How are you doing? Why?" He's like, "I'm so blessed. Like God is so good."
Oh my gosh.
And I just left. I was like, I've never seen that done so well. And that could be a job where you're like, man, I can't give glory to God here.
Yeah.
And he just did it in 2 seconds.
Totally.
So,
dude, there was a show, Undercover Boss, and there was this guy, and he had moved here from Kazakhstan, I believe, and he worked for 7-Eleven. And he did like the midnight shift of like unloading the trucks, but he would like sing the whole time. And so the CEO has gone undercover to do a ride along with him. So it's the CEO of 7-Eleven, but he's undercover. And he's singing, and he has so much joy, and he's like correcting the CEO, and he's like, no, it needs to be better than that. Like,
No
let's fix the
way.
chips.
That's amazing.
And he's just like taking so much pride in it. And the CEO was so moved by him that he gave him his own store.
Wow.
And I was so fascinated by the story that I found him, and I was like, hey, I want to interview you if I can. And so I just interviewed him, talked to him, and it turns out he's a believer. So like his motivation was that he knew the Lord, and he just, because he had moved here from another country, and he had experienced lack in his upbringing, like he was just so grateful to be able to have a job, to be employed, to be able to provide for his family, to drive a truck, even though it was overnight, even though it was at midnight, even though it was a job that a lot of people here might look down on.
Yeah.
But he was faithful in his job, and it's like that's what God says: whoever has been faithful with little things, I will entrust to more things, right? It's like the parable of the talents.
Yep.
And so we shouldn't resent the position we're in. We shouldn't resent the paycheck we receive. What does it look like for us to make a difference by being the best? And right now you live in a time where there's like GoFundMe and crowdsourcing, and everybody wants to come up with the next greatest idea or be the YouTuber. It's like, listen, if you have a job, like consider that God put you there on mission for a purpose. And like do it to the best of your ability as an act of worship, so that other people come to know him in a greater way. Because as I say, you all have the same job. You're all evangelists. Like you're all represent. If you are a follower of Jesus, you represent the kingdom, and so you work there with excellence to bring people to know him in a greater way.
I was talking to someone this morning who works at a fast food restaurant, and I'm like, hey, do you like your job? He's like, I love my job. I'm like, why? He's like, I get to work with people every single day who don't know Jesus.
Yes.
Most people I work with don't know Jesus. He's like, I'm in ministry. I'm like, yes.
Who
That's
was
what we
it?
need. We need more of
I
that.
can tell you.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, don't shout out someone on the
I don't
podcast for
know.
doing something good.
I don't know.
Here's the one thing I think every person listening to this podcast could do in their job that would make the biggest difference. Do not complain or grumble or like bemoan what you have to do. I feel like that is the thing that I see my
You
husband.
guys stop bemoaning.
I don't know what a different word is for that. I feel like, unfortunately, that is one thing that marks this generation, as they're grumbling about having to go to work or having to wear this, or they're always complaining about a boss. And I'm like, that is opposite.
But you probably
of
do
Scripture.
that as a mom. Like, how do you keep yourself from, like,
I really
I feel
have,
like there's
that's
so many
great.
moments where it's
Yes.
like, my kids are making me lose my mind.
I have to stop and I have to pray and I have to ask God to help me. And I have to then turn that into gratitude and be grateful that I'm staying home. Be grateful that I'm, have spit up on me because it means a baby's healthy and burping. I don't know what it is, but it's like you have to fight that and I have to fight it top of the list.
Totally.
But I'm like, that is what could set you apart.
I mean, yeah. Because
you notice when someone
like
is
we just had our second. And it can be hard sometimes. And then you're around people who are struggling having kids. And it's like, man, the perspective is just so messed up.
Yes.
Philippians 2:14, do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky. And so, like, you think about the contrast of a star, which is bright, against a black night, like a dark night. He's just saying, hey, you're going to pop if you simply don't grumble and complain, and it's so true. Like when that person popped, they stood out like a star because they were helping you park your car at the game. Yeah. And just they had some energy, and it's like, man, that takes nothing. It takes no education to do that. Like there's a very small shift you could make in your day. Yep. Like as you brush your teeth, you could just say, hey, today I am going to honor God with my words, and I'm going to bring energy to everything I do. Like I've heard it, like I said this morning, like half of being a great leader is just bringing energy to the right ideas. I mean, truly, like just coming in the room with energy and being like, man, I'm excited to be here. Like if you don't do that, if you walk in mopey and you frown and you talk like it's just another day, it's like you're not a good leader. You're not a good leader. You will never be a good leader doing that. Yep. No one is going to be like, I'm so excited to follow them because they lack
whatever you feel, they'll be below that.
That's right, 100%.
Yeah. Wow.
That's absolutely true.
So if we could summarize all these things, man, what do we talk about?
Do the baseline. Like even if it's not your gifting, respond to emails, show up on time, just basic level of leadership. Like do those things. Even if you think it's beneath you, do it. And then know what you're good at and amplify that. Like pour in energy, resources, get better at that thing. And do it in a way that shows the gospel and brings glory to God, and do not complain.
Yeah, glory. Yeah, as an act of worship.
Yeah,
and just have a great attitude. Like if you do those things, then you don't have to go back and take the GMAT. You don't have to go back to the routine of school. Like you're going to advance in your organization, whatever it is. And you don't have, like right now, this generation is so notorious for like jumping from one industry to the other industry. Malcolm Gladwell talked about like the 10,000 hour principle of just like it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. Whether that's true or not, I mean, it does take tenure. It does take focus. It does take commitment. And if you jump, like if you learn to make coffee, and then you go and you learn to do lesson plans, and then you go and you learn another craft, It's like you didn't become great at anything. You just jumped around until it became boring to you. Mm-hmm. And it's like sometimes you do got to push through that grind to like raise above, and there's seasons, man. There are seasons of grind, just don't trust them. Yeah. Like don't think that as soon as it's hard, you gotta get going, like go or do something else.
Do you think God works like that Undercover Boss situation?
Yeah.
Like he's always watching, and then
for sure. Like we're all
he's always watching?
We're all undercover. We're all undercover agents, right? Like God is like he's our commander in chief. He's like, man, there was this movie, The Informant, this principle, where Matthew Damon plays a true character in this movie. And what happened with this character is it was the largest price fixing scandal in America's history. And so there was some illegal activity happening within this corporation, and the FBI tapped I think it was the COO on the shoulder and just said, "Hey, you now work for us, and we want you to do the same things that you've been doing, so you don't get caught. We want you to be good at it, but we want you to be an informant for us. We want you to tell us what you're seeing, what's happening." And I just thought about how exciting that would be that day that you get tapped on the shoulder. And you're now working for the FBI, but you're still doing the same things, but you're working for this like higher power, and you have to be great at it, and you're having these conversations, but you have so much energy. I think that is really what you're doing. Like you work for the ruler of the world, the great high commander in chief.
He is your boss.
And you might put on a Starbucks apron, but in reality, you are working for God. You're at Starbucks undercover. You might put on like a teacher's badge or whatever, to go into the classroom, but you really work undercover for God, the great high commander in chief. He's tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, I want you to be winsome in the teacher's lounge. I want you to be great in the classroom. I want people to ask you questions, and I want you to report back to me what you're seeing in the conversations that you're having, because ultimately, like, this is your real mission. This is your real assignment. You're there undercover. You're an undercover agent as a teacher, as a barista, as an attorney, as a doctor, as a lawnmower, as a garbage man, as a 7-Eleven truck driver. Like, you're really an undercover agent working for God.
I mean, if people really believe that,
It
that would
change
change
everything.
the world.
And it changes your excitement, your vigor for what you're doing.
Because then even if you don't like your job, you can love it because of what you get to do.
I was going to tell the story of my friend who was going to change jobs because it paid more money.
Oh, wow.
And he stayed there, and he just saw like the fruit of that. But I'm going to save that for another episode.
Whoa,
Man,
I'm like on the edge of my seat.
Oh, it's a great story.
Yeah. All right, guys. Hey, we love you. Be an amazing employee, truly, like as though you're working for the Lord. Colossians 3:23 and 24. Much love. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Becoming Something, where we promise to keep the conversation honest and real for young adults in their 20s and 30s. Every moment we live is training for a future moment, and that's why we do this podcast, because we want you to be prepared for everything that life is going to throw at you. Our hope with this podcast is that it would help you become all that God desires you to be. To find out more, visit becomingsomething.com.